Hi guys, so today I wanted to talk about something that is really hard to get away from at the moment, and that is the Olympics, because it seems to be on all the time at the moment. So I thought I'd make a video, and it's specifically on the opening ceremony, which was on Friday, the 27th, I think, of July. When I first saw sort of Danny Boyle's concept and the model when he first showed it of the countryside thing, I was really kind of, oh god, here we go again. Countryside. Yeah, the people of England are people wearing top hats, dancing around maypoles, herding sheep. And that's what the first 5-10 minutes of the ceremony was. And then along comes Kenneth Branagh, and I love Kenneth Branagh. I think he's amazing. And he stood up and he gave the speech from The Tempest. What is it called? The Isle is full of noises or something. But when he sort of said the final line, which was "Be not afraid, the isle is full of noise," and those chimneys came up from the ground, my jaw dropped because I did not expect that. I really love stage design and set design and things. I couldn't for the life of me work out how those chimneys came out of the ground. I know now, because they were publishing it in the newspapers and things, and it turned out they were inflatable and they'd been winched up. But at the moment I was like, how the heck is that happening? It was, for me, that was the single most impressive point of the night. And then that sort of image with the rings all coming together above the stadium, that was incredible. I loved it. And yet, as spectacular as it was, and it was spectacular, there was so much going on, and there were all these pyrotechnics and these rings of being hoisted into the air and things. It felt so British. It felt so kind of intimate and bonkers, I think was the word, which is when Dizzy Rascal came up later and started singing bonkers, and was like, yeah, it is bonkers, because hey, that's Britain, live with it. The Queen and James Bond, that was genius. I cannot imagine another head of state who would allow the Mickey to be taken out of them, like Her Majesty the Queen, except maybe Obama. But I mean, she only needed to say "Good evening, Mr. Bond," and my family just erupted into laughter, because her back was to the camera, and we were all kind of like, "Yep, look alike." It's funny, but it's a look-alike. And then she turned around, and it was the Queen, and I was like, oh, okay. And then when the Queen jumped out of the helicopter, that was hilarious. And the Union Jack Spy Who Loved Me parachute things, that was brilliant. I loved it. I am a royalist. I do think the Queen does a lot, and it just improved my impressions of her, and what a incredible woman she is to allow the Mickey to be taken out of her in front of billions of people who are watching. So yeah, the whole Great Ormond Street Hospital and the NHS thing, I did like it. I enjoyed it. I do think the NHS is so screwed over at the moment, but I felt myself kind of wondering, this is very British, would the rest of the world get it? Kind of, I mean, would it have the same effect on, say, India that it would on us? I mean, obviously it is to sort of inspire the British people, as well as kind of show the rest of the world what we're about and things like that. I just did kind of find myself wondering at that point. But then the story time thing came along, and the second to the right part, when J.K. Rowling stood up and read from Peter Pan. I love J.K. Rowling. Again, when is the Queen going to give her Dame status or whatever? Because nobody has done more for British literature in recent years than J.K. Rowling, and I think it was so fitting that she was given a part to play in the opening ceremony, and the fact that one of her creations, none other than Lord Voldemort, was also given centre stage in possibly the most impressive puppetry I've ever seen since Warhorse, because those puppets were incredible. The Voldemort and the Queen of Hearts. There was the child catcher on roller skates, and I heard someone say that there was Captain Hook somewhere. But yeah, it did get very dark at that point. I did feel Danny Boyle's sort of impression on that, and it was very Danny Boyle how it suddenly went from these Sergeant Peppers and Chelsea pensioners and things into this dark storyland place. And then Mary Poppins comes along to save the day, practically perfect in every way. Yeah, Mary Poppins. All I need to say. Mr. Bean, Mr. Bean, Mr. Bean, when are you gonna do another TV series? Because the world misses you. That was again hilarious, and I do think even if you don't know Mr. Bean, that would have been funny because it is just like then him tweeting or whatever he was doing with his phone at the same time. I loved it. I really do like Mr. Bean. Rowan Atkinson's a comic genius. I think that was again a highlight, and it was funny, and it's so hard to get real funny these days. Frankie and June. I'll be honest, I felt that dragged out a little bit, but I mean, there's so much pop culture to get through in 10-15 minutes, and I do think it did it quite well because they went over so much, and it was hard to get all the references because there were that many, and it was non-stop music and dance and choreography is dance for those 10-15 minutes, and it was good. It was really great to see so much British culture managing to infuse itself into the opening ceremony. Then there was David Beckham on the speedboat. I thought that was quite funny, actually. The smirk on his face as they went under Tower Bridge was hilarious. Then I think it was Emily Sandé singing Abide With Me. Now, I can't stand Abide With Me. I hate it with a passion, but I made myself watch it because I love Emily Sandé, and also because it was so different. I loved the key that she sang it in. The dancers during that were amazing. I loved it, and I do think it was kind of downtime before the parade and things. It did also feel like a very fitting tribute to the 7/7 bombing victims. It was horrific. It was the way the atmosphere of Britain changed from jubilation. Yay, we've got the Olympics. 24 hours later, 52 people are dead. The transport system's down. What the hell is going on? And it did need to be kind of I don't know. It did need to be paid tribute to, really. I do think it was very fitting, and I am very annoyed that apparently the American television networks cut away at that point to an interview, I believe. I am very annoyed at that because I think that's very disrespectful, but you know, what can you do? The parade, which is basically a find out how many countries you didn't know existed celebration. Yeah. I mean, you can't get away from the parade. They have to do it. It's not like, oh, let's just not do the parade this time. But you know, it went on for an hour and 20 minutes. By which point, I think I was nearly asleep. I ended up dragging my duvet in and just sitting there like that for an hour and 20 minutes because it was so boring. But when Team GB walked out, it was that you could feel it. You could feel the atmosphere coming through the television because it seemed like everybody was screaming GB, GB, and it was amazing. It was amazing to watch and see all their faces, and Chris Hoy leading them out, and Tom Daly. It was very moving actually to see them come out, even if they did look like they just walked out of JD Sports. Steve Redgrave carrying the torch through the stadium. You know, I wanted Steve Redgrave to light the cauldron. I honestly thought he would, but I thought he was when he was running through the stadium with it. I was like, oh, okay, Steve Redgrave's going to light the cauldron, and then he didn't, and he gave it to a young, I think he was a runner or a rower or something, but he gave it to a young athlete, and they sort of swapped it. There were 7 of them, and they sort of swapped running around the track with it. And I was like, okay, who are they going to give it to? It turned out they didn't give it to anybody because they were the ones that lit the cauldron. and the way that cauldron moved was incredible. I think it was probably joint impressive status with the chimneys coming out of the ground, because it was so fitting and so right that it was the future of British athletics lighting the cauldron. Because yeah, I'm glad it was them and not just some random person. I don't know how else to describe it. I'm glad the 7 young athletes lit it. It makes you proud to be British. I know it's a cliche, but it really does. I'm proud to be British. God save the Queen and all that. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Have we won a gold yet?